She hadn't spoken to another person in 43 days. The silence was deafening, her thoughts looping louder with each passing hour. In isolation, her sense of time warped, her memory frayed, and shadows in her mind grew teeth. We are not meant to be alone. From birth, our brains seek faces, voices, touch, a chorus of cues that guide emotion and thought. When that input vanishes, the brain protests, breaking itself to be heard. Social connection isn't a luxury, it's survival. We mirror joy, absorb pain, and shape each other's minds in ways as real as neurons firing.
Welcome to Extreme Brains, the podcast that embraces the chaos of a world gone wild. I'm David Evanoff, along with my fellow brainers and chaos enthusiasts, Sam Goldstein and James Woods. We are broadcasting to you from the semi-luxurious Evanoff Studios, located on the west side of the over-industrialized haven of South Salt Lake City, Utah. South Salt Lake City, Utah, the only place you can be south and west at the same time. Each week we'll dive headfirst into the absurdities of modern life, sharing sharp critiques, unfiltered humor, and just the right amount of existential dread. Our tagline, 3 voices, 1 mic, in a world gone wild. Welcome in, Brainers. Episode 4, Your Brain. Typically we'd say something like your brain on, but today it's a little different. It's your social brain, wired to connect. I guess that would be your brain on connection. Tell us about it.
Your brain on connection. I like that.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that. Well, I think we start with a basic foundational question, because we all agree that most species like to be around each other. There are a few who do not. Isn't it interesting? Some don't require any parents, and so salmon and snakes are born with enough instinct to know how to survive. They don't require parents, and as far as we're aware, they don't require any affiliation. Sure, you may see 2 snakes laying next to each other, but I'm not sure it's because they're friends.
Right. Yeah.
And then there are other species that typically require a single parent, like a bear. And for some reason, the males of the species are solitary, right? Although you see younger male bears, younger lions, male lions, grouping together, I think it's more out of loneliness than out of some preordained genetic unfolding. But eventually, they don't tolerate each other. They don't want each other around, right? And then there's our species. We have 2 parents, or 3 parents, I like to say, mama, daddy, and the society, which is doing more to raise our children today than ever before. But so there may be something to being around others of our kind, or being around other species, that does something for us. Otherwise, we'd be polar bears. Doesn't do anything for us. But the question is, are we biologically hardwired to connect, or over hundreds of thousands of years have we shaped our brains because we couldn't get out of each other's way, so if we're going to have to be together, we better figure out some benefit from it. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
So and we talk about a best friend. James, do you have a best friend growing up?
Yeah, I did.
And what why was that your best friend?
Because of the social connection. Like, we both had the same things in common. We were both kind of outsiders. Little S.E. hint.
Was he a musician as well?
A music lover. I wasn't quite a musician then, but I knew that I wanted to be. So, yeah, it was music.
So shared interests. Sometimes shared secrets.
Yeah.
Sometimes shared activities. We have a guest with us today, Kevin Brian Taylor.
Welcome, Kevin.
Hey, thank you.
Kevin's from the southern part of the United States, so he sees the world very different than the rest of us. But he's the most social person I know, so we should ask him, Why do we have friends? Why do you need friends? Why do we socialize? Why don't we just all sit at home watching our cable television? Why do we want to go out?
Why do we want to go out? That's a great question. So I don't know the answer to this, but I will give it a stab here. But for me, why people look to connect and to have friendships is to, share experiences, share pains, share happiness, kind of something, people that are there along the way to be there for us. And
share as in misery loves company kind of sharing?
a little of that too, probably. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would say that my best friend shared a lot of that misery. I was living in Japan, and I come to Mississippi, where I meet my best friend after being away for many years, and I would say that he helped me survive, a school where I was this strange being from a foreign planet, going from Japan to Mississippi.
Right.
What makes Kevin the most social creature? I find that fascinating.
Why do I think that?
Yeah.
Well, just he's already. We've had the show's 5 minutes in, and he's laughed 4 times,
Right.
and he enjoys the social.
And is that how you feel?
right?
Like,
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say that I'm a social creature. I thrive in being around people. I really enjoy it. Yeah.
And it
The right
does have.
people.
For sure.
It
I
does
don't like to be around negative people, I would say, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I mean, it does have its advantages because Kevin's been successful in a variety of businesses, and because he can connect with people. So maybe it does play a role. But I think the sales role, the business role, can't explain socialization because we were sharing experiences together, living in caves before we ever had businesses or stores or supermarkets or whatever. But Kevin, tell them just from your childhood, because you mentioned you were in China for a period of
Japan
for a period of time. Maybe give everybody sort of the chronology of your experiences here.
So I would say I'm one of the most confused individuals of all individuals because I was born in Vicksburg, Mississippi, a small town in Mississippi. My father worked for the Corps of Engineers, and as part of his job, he took some contracts that took us abroad 2 different times in my life. And so and then to add more complexity to that, my mother is from El Salvador, so I'm a Mississippi, El Salvadorian child who has spent 8 years of my childhood in a place like Japan. So I don't know if I answered the question or didn't answer the question, but so I live in Mississippi. I'm born there. When I'm in 3rd grade, we moved to Tokyo. A crazy experience, a really neat experience for a
8
kid.
years?
8 years, but 2 different times. So that was 6.5 years. So 3rd grade to the middle of 9th grade, I'm there in Japan. And then in the middle of 9th grade, I moved back to Mississippi where I attend high school. A school that I didn't spend a lot of those years with the
those
classmates
kids.
and in a small town where everybody knows one another. So that's where I'd say the best friend was a good friend of mine that became a lifelong friend, Brian Wells, who kind of took me in.
When you went to Japan, you made friends.
Absolutely, yes.
Right. So there's something about the social brain. I don't think it's one gene. I think it's probably multiple genes that contribute to socialization. And at one extreme, I'm not even going to say autism, because those people have trouble making friends because they don't take perspective. But I won't say that. But it just, at one end is people who just don't seem to need friends, because a lot of the kids with autism that I work with would like friends at some level. But at the extreme of someone who says, I don't need any friends, and is perfectly happy to be me, myself, and I, right? And then at the other extreme, people who are insatiable and have to always have someone around them, And sometimes the extremes really represent an abnormality, right? So sometimes the person who has to have somebody around them all the time, it's because they validate themselves externally and their worth is based on what they think other people think of them, and therefore they always have to be around someone, because if they're by themselves, they have no metric
Right.
to judge, right? To judge. But when you think about how we evolved, right? So we've talked about a human, our species, Homo sapiens, a few 100,000 years we've been around. There were probably 24 hominid species a million years ago, 500,000 years ago. They're gone. We've talked on the show before about the critical things that seem to happen, that we developed language, which allows us to think one thing and say something else. And along the way, language helped us communicate both with each other and when we were hunting, or whatever the case may be, right? To take perspective, to take other people's perspective. And the brain, so you might ask, well, where's the friendship gene? Is there a gene like eye color or hair color? Your little daughter, right? So when she's 3, Evie, when she walks in a room, within 30 seconds, everybody loves Evie. It's as if she's holding out her hands, like stretching her arms out and saying, look at me, look what a wonderful, articulate child I am, and look what wonderful parents I have, right? So there's obviously some genetics to that affiliation, right? But I don't think it's one gene. I think it's multiple genes, and I don't think it's one part of the brain. So when you look at the brain, there's a part of the brain that makes judgment and morality and decision-making. We call that prefrontal cortex. And there's a part of the brain that processes emotion, particularly threats. And in today's world, that amygdala seems to be overworking. Everybody's constantly on edge, pushing cortisol and adrenaline, because you never know where there's something dangerous around the corner, right? And then the temporoparietal junction, a part of the brain where different parts, the temporal lobes and the parietal lobes come together, that part of the brain we think has to do with reading other people's thoughts. We've talked about that before, that some people have a hard time putting themselves in other people's place. So if you can't see the world through somebody else's eyes, then there's only one way, my way. And and not because you're unwilling, but because you just can't do it. But the most interesting part of the brain is in the frontal part of the brain we call mirror neurons, as in looking in a mirror. And what they find is that if I'm watching somebody swim, that there are neurons that fire as if I was swimming. So the idea of that if you can't learn to swim by sitting on the dock and watching everybody else isn't completely true. And some people's mirror neurons are so good at what they do that they actually watch somebody do something and they can do it.
Wow.
For the first time they're able to do it. So socialization is kind of the sum total of all of these parts of the brain that affects facial expression, vocal tones, gestures. In fact, now with fMRI research, they're saying, I can tell a few milliseconds what you're going to do before you do it. Because the neurons start firing even before you say or you do something. So with that complex a system, it's easy to understand this idea of, well, where does socialization come from? Because it's connected to all of that.
Wow.
Right.
That's a complex system.
Right, because we're social beings. We don't seem to exist very well. So if you look at being alone, right? So there's studies where they have in an office, they'll put a sign on somebody's door as part of a research project, don't talk to this person. And it does take its toll, as Craig, when he opened the segment, talked about this person who hadn't talked to anybody for a while. It takes its toll. We seem to need that for whatever reasons. It's unclear. And is our brain that way because we've lived so close together for so long? Or do we live so close together because our brains seem to have evolved to need that? And then the question becomes is how much of it do we need? How many friends do you need? And we've never come up with a system of hierarchy of friendships, meaning you're an A1, you're an A3. I communicate with you at one level, with you at one level, but we talk about friends and acquaintances.
Right.
Right? But beyond that dichotomy, right? So there's strangers, there's acquaintances, and there's friends. But where is that line between acquaintance and friend? The other day I was interviewing a boy with autism who's very socially isolated, but he doesn't think so. So he says, "Oh, I have a lot of friends." But his definition of friends is, well, I sit next to them in the classroom, I ride next to them on the bus. I don't even talk to them, but they're my friends.
Right.
Right? So there's that, the mind comes into play and kind of distorts it. But we rely on interactions. We couldn't survive, I don't think, without the ability to socialize. And socializing effectively, I think, comes from family life.
So in the case of Kevin, bouncing all over the world, family life
Was really important.
Yeah,
For sure.
And so he grew immediate social connections, and maybe
had to,
honed it,
right?
or
I would
Well-
say that may be an interesting point. Yeah, like the being comfortable, being uncomfortable, if that makes sense.
Right.
Always in some place new. Definitely having a strong family where my brothers and sisters are some of my best friends. So even to this day, so maybe all that change and
yeah.
but kind of help.
Did that happen
mold
for you fast? When you went into a new place, could you make friends quickly?
Fairly fast, yeah. And I never kind of held back, I would say, where I felt like the process of getting to know people for the first time was not new to me, so I could, quickly move past that.
Because you had successful experiences
Before.
that you built that on, right? But I do think it's lots of genes. We talk about brain structure. There's also brain chemistry. So oxytocin connects. It's the reason that the mother zebra stands in front of her baby when the lions come. It's a futile task, but that oxytocin drives that emotional connection. And dopamine, as we've talked about, is involved with shared pleasure and connection, and serotonin is involved with mood. So it seems like socialization is one of those human behaviors that requires your whole brain. Right? It's terribly integrated to who we are, and you look at some children who are very social, but not very smart. Right? So we look at kids with Down syndrome, because we always say they're so friendly, and they are, right?
Yeah.
So they've been blessed with better than the average genes in terms of socializing. It's on an immature level, but intellectually they don't function very well. And then you see other people who intellectually function very well, but socially, you want to take a lesson in that. You watch The Big Bang Theory, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Leonard, because he's so in your face. Well, why would I want to do that? Well, why do I care about that?
Yeah.
Well,
That in-your-face honesty.
he's right. He's so, and he could care less about having people around. Yeah, he wants to play Dungeons and Dragons with the others or whatever. But his idea of a good evening is, playing a video game and studying some crazy thing about Star Wars, and that's it, right? So it's why and is loneliness a consequence of having that need for socialization and having it be unfulfilled? And does socialization in kids play a role in their intellectual development and in their ability to work cooperatively? And where is the edge of socialization? We talk about friendship as but the penultimate example of successful socialization, maybe marriage. Although sometimes you're married, that's not really doesn't necessarily mean you're good at socializing, right? But it's friendship is the penultimate example of being able to use your social skills to initiate and to maintain, right? And I see some children who are very good at making friends, but can't keep a friend. And other kids who struggle to make friends, but once they make a friend, can keep the friend. So it's a very different process of, hey, you want to be my friend? Let's do this, let's do that. And after a week or two, and I'm calling you 3 times a day and knocking on your door. Hey, can James come out and play? James, can you come out and play now? 3 times a day. After a week, you go, well, geez, I had enough of this guy. Give me a headache.
I'm tired.
Right? But initially, I could make that friend, but I didn't understand what it took to keep it and maintain that friendship. Right? And other people just don't know what to say or when to say it. And you see the 2 core kinds of problems that kids with socialization have is that some kids exhibit low impact, high incidence kinds of problems. So low impact means doesn't bother me a whole lot, but you do it a lot. So you get too close to me when you talk to me, or you stick your finger in your nose, or something that I go, oh, geez, what's wrong with that guy?
Right.
But it doesn't really hurt me. And then the other side of it is the kids who exhibit high impact, low incidence. You don't have to strike another child with a stick. The saying, you always hurt the ones you love. You don't have to hit another kid with a stick more than a couple of times and everybody gives you a wide berth, right? And those are kind of the 2 kinds of problems kids have in establishing and maintaining social relations. Either you don't get the nuances of give and take, or you can make those friends, but then whether you're too aggressive or too insatiable or whatever the case may be, you don't want to stop. You don't want to give it up. And I'll leave you with the bus test before we take a break. And the bus test is pretty simple. Is what happens when you sit next to a kid on the bus. And on a bus, kids either disturb you or they worry you when you watch their interaction. And the child who's socially inept, when he gets on the bus, if he's sitting on a seat and another child gets on and it's the only seat, they'll sit next to him. He's not going to bother them. But if that child has a reputation for disruptive behavior, I'll stand. Because I might sit next to him and he might strike me. And we come back, we could talk about the controversial, we call them controversial kids, who, by the way they behave, shouldn't have any friends, but do. And I'll tell you the mystery of that.
Fantastic. All right, Brainers, we're going to take a little break, and we will be back for segment 2.
We're going to listen to music of the
Alamo. Let's do it. Yeah, that's right. We're coming up on episode 7.
7.
All right. Enjoy.
Where did everybody go? It's so quiet, or I've just gone deaf. Do I belong to Mexico? Who is living? Is there no one left? It was just an hour ago. Before the canyons cleansed us from all sin, this was once the Alamo. A lonely mission that we could not win, could not win. There was just a wall of flame. It didn't take long. Everybody's gone. No one calling out my name was all so fast. Every single one. Go and ask Joe. Go and fetch Joe. up Joe below. Go and get Joe. Go and find Joe. Have you seen Joe? Joe will know. Go and get Joe. Go and find Joe. Have you seen Joe? Go and get Joe. Well, maybe I'm already dead, and this is as good as it gets. And this is my last farewell on my way to hell. Jesus has turned me down, and he's sending me his regrets. Then the devil is on his way to collect his debt.
Welcome back, Brainers, segment 2. We're talking about your brain on connection.
We were talking about the bus.
That's right, the bus test. Thank you.
And it begs the question, can you socialize and not have any friends? I mean, do you have to have the ability to socialize in order to establish and maintain friendships? And when you look at kids who struggle with that, and never, for example, we talk about having a best friend during the latency age 7 to 10, roughly, right? And I don't care if you have no other friends, and if your best friend is as weird as you are. And we talked about that, what that means, but that best friend somehow sets a foundation for you to be able to have contacts and socialization, maybe more, maybe less. What we know is it isn't how many social contacts or friends you have, it's the ability to have, in latency age, one solid one and a close friend or two in adolescence. The kids that don't have that as adults seem to really struggle. And again, when you try and think from an evolutionary perspective, okay, we need this, like you need sleep. We've talked about that. What happens to people when they're deprived of that social contact? And social contact as in physical contact as opposed to through a two-dimensional web, right? What happens to people when they're deprived of that? And they go a little batty. We have a whole industry now, a loneliness industry.
I was just going to ask.
Billions of
I read
dollars.
a lot about the male loneliness epidemic.
Well, I don't know about male, but we're all and leave it to American economic ingenuity. It's a $billion industry. Create your own bot. Have your own bot to talk to. You don't even talk to anybody else. And it's a gigantic. I wrote about it in one of my articles for Psychology Today. It's an industry. And so where does the industry come from? Now, again, you could argue that the need is foisted upon people, so they think they need it, right? If I tell you enough times you need it in enough ways, eventually go, oh, maybe I need this. But I think it's driven partly by loneliness, but partly by convenience. I don't have to work as hard to have the bot, right, or to have an online chat group. That's,
AI girlfriends are a lot easier to manage.
Right, AI girlfriends.
They complain a lot less. That's
right,
for
and
sure.
Everything you want.
the application that somebody hasn't developed, maybe we should develop it, is your own social group where you're the only real person. And everybody else is it's like those games where you're playing, they're all computers. You're playing some big game and there's 10 players, but you're the only one playing. The rest of them are computer generated
Right.
participants or actors. But we don't like that solitary. So somehow our nervous system tells us, hey, you need this. And again, it begs the question, do we need it because we've become accustomed to it? Or do we need it because, like sleep, it's part of the essential, whatever we want to say, triad or quad, or you need sleep and you need affiliation and you need food. But you need that kind of affiliation, and if you don't have a feedback, it begins to affect your sense of who you are. and it begins to affect your memory and attention. And you kind of lose sight when we look at studies of people in prison, people on polar expeditions, space. People were up in space for a long time. Now they go up to space, they've got a handful of people up there with them.
Yeah.
So they are socializing. But somehow, it's critical for our mental health.
And is it critical to have a physical human being? Or is there research that says this bot is actually helping some of these lonelier kids?
Well, I don't know that.
I don't either.
I don't know. And you raise an interesting point, because here I was talking about, as David was, horny males and adults, but you're talking about kids. Would it be helpful to have that kind of artificial friend? I don't know. I don't think anybody's looked at
Kids
it.
had pen pals, when
And
I was growing up, and they
they
never met them, and they never.
And they made dolls into human beings,
Sure.
and all kinds of kids have done that.
Well, there's
And they're superheroes, and
There's
so,
the penultimate example of why am I blocking on the name of the movie? But the plane crashes and he's the only one that lives. So he's on the island.
Lone Survivor.
Yeah. And
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks, yeah.
And what does he do? He paints a face on a soccer ball.
Yeah,
He makes a friend.
He makes
Wilson.
a friend.
Wilson. That's right.
And
Yeah.
that's the biggest crisis of the film, is when Wilson
Right.
is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it is. Again, we've talked about this when Craig was on the show last season about how much of the way we look at the world and think about the world is driven by what we see in fiction. But maybe it resonates with us because it's true. And the pain a child feels when their best friend moves away, or when their best friend rejects them.
Yeah.
And is loneliness an inevitability if you don't have friends and affiliation? Maybe not. Maybe there is something to learn from Sheldon. Let's all be a little more like Sheldon.
Right.
We can take it or leave it.
And does that paint resilience as far as, like Kevin moving around a lot? I moved around a lot as a kid, 4 different states, 4 different schools growing up through high school.
Jeez.
So you lose your friends, and then you have to gain new friends, and you're constantly.
And
if you're
when
not,
you did that, your friends were gone, because it wasn't today where you could get on a chat.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
yeah,
they
you
were,
just didn't see them.
Yours were across the world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Right. You couldn't get on Zoom and talk every day. And you
so you had to be resilient enough to make new friends.
Yeah.
Right. Right. But again, it's this multi-systemic phenomena in which your health, your physical health, your mental health, as a child, your development, even your behavior, is tied to the connections you make with the people around you. I mean, I'm an only child, so we've talked about this. You think, well, okay, so maybe you're a good example of, well, let's see what happened to you with friends. I have friends, but I'm not one of these guys that has a poker group and this group and that group, and but on the other hand, I lived in an apartment building with lots of other only children and could get in the elevator to go see my friends. So it was almost as if I had siblings. We were just in different apartments.
Do you still connect with any of those friends?
I connect with them loosely, but we don't. They all are in New York. One is a couple in Florida. But that's the other part of it, is social media has enabled us to communicate. Because without that social media, I wouldn't talk to them. I wouldn't see them. I
Right.
wouldn't.
Right.
But I post something, and 2 or 3 of them make a response. And there's that fleeting moment when, oh, there's a connection. Somebody has seen and thought about something that I posted, and they took the time to respond to me. How do all those little variables add up? And why is it important? Why do we care about friendships, and we care because it appears there's enough research to show that children who struggle with friendships, either because they're aggressive or because they're withdrawn or because they have some neurological condition or mental health condition, they seem to face more adversity. So we say having friends and social connections is a way to be resilient, a way to ward off, and before the break I mentioned the controversial child. Right? And so the controversial child is a child who may behave in aggressive ways. Oh, I don't want him near me. Or maybe withdrawn. Is he even in our class? I've never seen this kid before. On the other hand, he's really good at something. He's the best soccer player. He's the best fisherman. He's the best whatever it is. He's the best Fortnite player. I want to play with him on my team.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's a quid pro quo. I'll put up with the fact that he's really not a good friend because he has something to offer me in another way. And isn't that why people cozy up to music stars and movie stars? And is it real? Are they really that special? Do we really give a shit if we're friends with them? Well, no, except that when you're in their circle of fame, somehow it's like, oh, okay, I want to be in this circle of fame.
It tracks, yeah.
With this guy, even though, he's really an asshole. But I like being around him because we get in a lot of places for free.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Right to the front of the line.
Right to the front of the line. So we've created a world where, so let's pick times in history. Let's pick 1000 BC. So 1000 BC, we probably had structures. We stayed in one place. We raised crops. So you'd have a little village, and you'd have a few friends that played in the dirt with. There was no school, really, right? I mean, you move forward another 500.
Regular life was school, yeah.
Yeah.
You just keep moving
regular
ahead.
life and all the work that had to be done just to survive.
Right.
Was school.
Right. And everything
was about survival.
In other words, maybe the earliest origin of friendships and affiliation was that they chipped in with you cooperatively to survive.
Sure.
To find food, but now when you look at that transition, I guess if we were making some kind of a fluid cartoon that showed kids 500 BC, 500 AD, 1000 AD, we'd see them affiliating by working together. Some play, because play helps us develop adult skills, but still kind of a combination. And then at some point in time, it turned. And friendship meant affiliating in recreational activities. We tend to not, we help our friends out if they need help, but mostly friendships are engaged in what? Recreational activities. Right? I think.
Yeah. When did that change?
Yeah, that's
that's right.
Would you say is that after the invention of the car or some of these amenities that we?
When our friend Graham Russell mentions that of Air Supply, that he and Russell Hitchcock, who are the two principals who've been together 50 years or 51 years, how they're best friends. And Graham goes on to say, and we've never had a fight, we've never had a disagreement. Right, but they've never lived in the same city.
It makes it easier, right?
And they travel together, but that's a different kind of, I think, friendship. I'm not going to speak to it, but maybe there were years when they were younger and chasing women and stuff, they did it together. I don't know. But when did that change? When did friendship take on a different role? But that's true for a lot of things, because our species, for the majority of our existence, spent the bulk of our awake time surviving.
A lot of their song titles would suggest that they were lonely.
Air Supply. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So maybe Graham wrote the songs, so I guess he sang them. So maybe Maybe. What we know is that social contact is not a luxury, right? So you could say to yourself, well, there's two ways to look at it. What happens when you don't have enough of it downstream? What happens when you have enough of it? What happens when you have too much of it, right? And now we use the opportunity to see your friends as a reward for meeting your responsibilities. Did you get your homework done? Did you do your chores? You can't go see your friends.
Right.
Right? Well, it's almost like saying, well, did you get your homework done? No? Well, then I'm going to take a pint of blood out of your body. I mean, literally, because those activities are what gives you an identity. You know, this morning I talked to a parent with a very sweet little boy who's 5, but for reasons we don't understand, his brain, we talk about myelinating, the dendrites developing this protein that insulates them, so you're not moving all over the place when you're trying to move your hand or thinking. And he's just developing at a much slower rate for reasons we don't understand. We call that idiopathic. 95% of kids who are delayed in development, and I'm not talking about just a reading disorder, I'm talking about delayed across the board in everything, or nearly everything, that those kids struggle to fit in, right? And they struggle to make friends because the kids around them are more mature. And the one area, I'll tell you why I tell you this, the one island of competence, which is a term we use in our model. If you have an ocean of inadequacy, you better have an island of competence to rest, or you drown. He's advanced as an athlete. So he's 5, but the tennis coach says, boy, he runs and strikes the ball like an 8 or 9-year-old. And when he's out there doing that, he feels normal. Otherwise, he tells his mother, do I have to go to school today? And if I go today, do I have to go tomorrow? Mm-hmm. Because he's already experiencing this disconnect between what seems to be valued, which then the kids see him struggling and see that the teacher is not happy with that or whatever and say, well, I'm going to keep my distance from him.
The disconnect grows.
Right, the disconnect grows. And so I bring this up because this is his island of competence. And my comment to the mother is never gamble that for anything else. Never say to him, if you don't get your reading done, then we can't go play tennis, because playing tennis is the one thing he does that maybe nourishes his nervous system and his sense of identity, which gives him the strength to face other things. In one large study a number of years ago about high school students who were struggling, those who had an anchor, something they did well, seemed to get through everything else. And those who didn't seemed to fall by the wayside. And yet, look at how quickly, as parents, we gamble that island of competence. Well, you don't get your homework done, you can't go do this. Or if you don't get your chores done, I'm not going to allow you to go there, do this. And we gamble that. And now, if it doesn't work, we have a child who's got all of these challenges, and the one thing they were doing that gave them a sense of identity, we've taken that away. Mm. We've gambled that, right?
That's important, because my parents would never have taken away my play. I would go practice. That's what I would do when I wanted comfort, when I wanted to be happy. I would go practice. Practice piano, practice drums, whatever it was. And my parents would never take that away. So in today's world, we got to consider that with our kids. Don't take away that socialization. That's as important.
Or don't take away that activity that allows for socialization.
Yeah.
For you, it was still an isolated activity because
Yeah.
you were this child musical
Nerd.
prodigy playing the drums or playing the accordion. Right, but it gave you a sense of accomplishment.
Yes, that was my island. Much like you suggest, food or shelter, socialization is
Right.
is equally as
and
important.
so
I'd never considered that.
well, and when we come back, our last segment, just so you know, Kevin, we always introduce it with, would we be better off if we had the brain of a dog?
Okay. All right. I'll have to think about that a bit.
You know, dogs, I watch my 3 little sisters. They're 10 years old, 3 dogs. James knows them. You
Yep.
know
Oh,
them very well. And and they can be buddy-buddy, and then all of a sudden one does something and the other one is growling at her like, it's the end of the world, right? And then I'm like, what are you doing? Stop that. Oh, okay. And then she licks her. I mean, it's this, what happens when there's too much socialization? When you're around somebody all the time, right? And
siblings.
Like siblings. But we've created a world that, from a technology and a science perspective, could never have been predicted. Sure, Jules Verne predicted space travel or travel in a submarine, or I mean, there's some of these kinds of things but nobody could have ever predicted the world we have, and our instincts, one of which I think is the need to be connected to people, evolved in a world that was very different than the world we have today. And there seems to be a price to pay when we look at statistics on mental illness. We can talk about that. And when you really connect with someone, they say your brainwaves synchronize. You're in this flow state, and I think among those developments that make us who we are and why we're here when the last of the human species, Neanderthals, are gone, is our capacity for affiliation and the need for that affiliation. And what happens when we create a world in which accessing that affiliation is considered by most parents a third tier. I don't really care if you see your friends, I want you to get A's. And I don't really care if you go out to play, I want you to behave. Have we lost sight of what made us who we are and got us where we are? And my theory is that when you go through a day and you can't explain anything that's happening around you, from your cell phone to your car to whatever, you can't explain anything. I don't know how any of this works, why I'm doing any of this, whatever. Well, that's sort of the beginning of the end. And I'll leave you to think about, most species are on this planet for 3/4 to 1 million years before evolution just they evolve to a point and then they can't adapt. We've only been around 200,000, 250. I don't think we're going to make it to 500,000.
Right.
I don't see how. We're just too smug for our own good. Anyway, all right.
There we go. We'll take a little break. We got this word from Alamo, Voice of Freedom, and we'll be right back, Brainers.
History remembers the heroes. We remember the truth. Alamo, Voice of Freedom, tells the untold story of Joe, an enslaved man who walked out of the rubble of the Alamo, carrying more than scars. He carried the truth. Through love, loyalty, betrayal, and blood, this cinematic podcast series pulls back the curtain on the myth to reveal the people who lived, fought, and died behind the legend. From the shadows of revolution to the fire of battle, their voices rise. This isn't just history, it's memory reclaimed. One mission, one survivor, one story you've never heard until now. Alamo, Voice of Freedom, on all major podcast platforms.
Welcome back, Brainers. All right, let's wrap it up. Would
Well-
it be better if we were dogs?
Yeah. Well, dogs have a kind of a love-hate relationship with each other, right? But
Right.
they do. You see friendships that dogs pal around with each other. But so here's the thing. Supposing Evie woke up one day and everybody was gone. And they said, well, here's this person, she's going to make your meals, and here's this other person, she's going to give you a bath, and here's this other person. So all your needs will be met, but not by the same person. She would not be very happy.
No.
Right. And babies who years ago were raised in orphanages and were taken care of but had no consistent caretaker when they were being held, for example, developed what's called marasmus, or failure to thrive.
Oh, wow.
They didn't grow. And in one study with rhesus monkeys, they had a wire mesh mother with a bottle, and then another wired mother, but wrapped in terry cloth, soft and smooth. And the baby monkeys would go to the wire mesh mother to feed, but then went back to the comforted mother to spend all their time, even though it wasn't a real person, right? So we have a certain need for care and nurturance and connection early on. And I think the answer to the question is, so why friendships? Is they really evolve from our early need for nurturance and affiliation. It's a logical progression from I need you to hold me and take care of me, and because it helps me feel safe, and it keeps the cortisol from running through my body, and whatever the case may be, maybe friendships and affiliation just are a natural step after that. Because it'd be hard to see Evie at age 10 saying, okay, I'm all grown up now, I don't need any friends. Right. I don't need any connections.
Right.
No, because she has a long history of being connected, and in fact for her prime directive every day is to expand her social connections. Right? She wants to,
and at some point there's a break where it's no longer mom and dad. And then that's got to be evolutionary too, because you got to go off to a new group of people to breed.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. And bonding, I'm editing a new textbook on instincts, and I just finished the chapter on bonding, and how important that early affiliation is. What's fascinating is how much good science there is out there that doesn't find its way into the public's awareness. Mm-hmm. We should figure out how to do a TV series on bringing this kind of information, because you see some of the PBS kind of series that take information on different things and suddenly you go, wow, I didn't know that, and I didn't know this, and this is sure interesting. But again, I think it's, so what happens if you don't allow the process to unfold, like the Wild Boy of Avignon? Do you know that story?
No,
nobody's ever made a movie out of that one. So it was in Avignon in France in the mid-1800s. They find a feral boy comes wandering into town, and he's not dressed, and he's dirty as hell, and his hair is long and unkempt, and he's afraid of everybody, and he doesn't talk. And the theory was he was raised by wolves. Now, who knows if he was raised by wolves or locked in a closet or whatever, but he never, even though he was now around others, and he never developed that affiliation, that kind of connection, right? It's one of the themes in the Tarzan movies.
I was just thinking.
All right,
yeah,
right. Tarzan is raised by animals, and he just doesn't. He goes to London, and he just can't. He can't relate, right? He doesn't know how to fit in, and he doesn't. So there's the one side of it is what happens when that kind of development, because I think if you have normal nurturing, there's going to be some capacity for socialization and affiliation. So that's the one side. If you're deprived of it, the other side of it is you're not necessarily deprived of it, but you're not wired up for it, like autism.
Did he ever learn to speak?
The Wild Boy? No. Oh, he never spoke.
Wow.
Right. And I always wondered how Tarzan learned to speak, because the animals didn't talk, and all of a sudden he was talking in the movie. I mean, that's the wonder of the movies. You just don't pay attention to the things that
The small details.
the small details that are not so small. Just it's okay. Just assume it happened that way, and we'll move on. Remember, it's just a movie. Except that when we're done with it, I'm going to believe every part of it was true. But there's that issue of autism. See, I don't think that autism represents a failure to want to affiliate. I think it represents a failure to appreciate the need for affiliation. Because early on, there's not that connection, and they don't like to be held. And they don't make us smile. And they don't look you in the eye, and they don't do all those kinds of socially engaging things that young children do, right? So it doesn't even occur to them Right. So it's not like I reject friends. It's like, friends, what are you talking about? What's that? I'm uncomfortable around people. I don't know I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know what to say. I don't know. Right.
They're loud.
And they really don't. As opposed to, well, I don't like people. I don't know what to say, and I'm anxious. That's a different kind of problem. And then, if you're missing some of the components that are needed for friendship and affiliation. So let's say you're antisocial. It doesn't bother you when other people are hurt, as long as you get what you want. Well, that's going to affect your
That's gonna
friendships
mess up
or
your-
empathy, or there's a whole host of behavioral or mood-related things that'll disrupt friendships. But here's the I think the takeaway is that we have enough experiential and scientific knowledge to know that this is important. And that B.F. Skinner's idea of the Skinner box, in which a baby was raised in a box in which all of his needs were met, but he didn't need any adults, he didn't need any affiliation. He writes about that in his book, Walden 2, this society where people
I
raise
remember
children
my college days.
in boxes. But he actually thought that was a good idea, so he was writing it as an affirmation if this is how we should be, which I don't think is right. But given that we agree how important it is, then how do we create an environment for our children and ourselves that gives time to it? Because we don't value it. We don't value it in the sense that, as I pointed out a few minutes ago, friendship is third or fourth on the list of things I need you to do. Well, maybe it should be first on the list. And maybe we should be children should spend their first couple of years in school. Remember that book, Everything I Need in Life I Learned in Kindergarten. And maybe we should spend our time learning how to get along and how to rely on each other and work in teams and resolve conflict in an affirmative way and not give up friendships over disagreements. Look what's happening in the world politically today. You can't be friends with someone whose political ideology is different from yours. Well, who said that? but you can't, right? Except in this group here, because we
Yeah. We managed to pull it off.
We
pull
figured
it
it
off,
out.
but we're
Yeah.
not discussing politics.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's another part of socialization. We've learned, okay, let's not,
But it's not. I mean, again, it's
I think what allows us to do that in a group like this, where people know each other, is you know the human being, so you don't have to worry about
It's
what
true.
their politics are. Or you don't think about one view or another just because you know who they are as a person. So I find I have a good friend, two good friends that I politically could not find one thing in common necessarily. And we have a beautiful friendship where we respect each other and, we don't talk each other down. And I think a lot of it has to do with just I know who they are. And I would almost, I guess it would almost come to that point where you were trying to say where you could think through the paradigm of another person. And I think through the kindness, and I would say that's where they come to this point. It's because their whole view is about the kindness aspects of this political party or the other, or, whatever it may be, but it's the goodness in that human being.
well, and we were connected and affiliated before there were political parties,
yeah.
or
Right.
towns,
Absolutely.
or systems, or again, it's a fascinating phenomena how we have created an exoskeleton to manage our existence because of some of our instinctual drives. And by that I mean we've had this discussion of the unholy trinity of
Here we go
aggression, fear of difference, and belief. Again, if I believe it, it's right. If you believe something different, you're wrong. And I'm afraid of you because you look different or you act different. That underlying phenomena. And again, if you have something I want and won't share it, I'm going to take it. those kinds of instinctual behaviors kept us alive, but they don't work today. I mean, do you ever wonder, well, why don't people just treat each other better? Why do we need all these prisons? How come so many people have to be locked up because they don't follow the law? And for everyone that's locked up, there's probably 2 that aren't caught. So there's a significant percentage of the population. You know, it's the story of you ask people if you're riding behind a Brinks truck and a bag of money fell out on the road, and you could pick it up and take it and nobody would ever know, what would you do? And most people would take the money. I mean, those who answer honestly, but when they do these hidden cameras and things, you find people.
They never take it back.
Yeah,
or
they
very
don't.
few. Yeah.
So look at this exoskeleton we built to try and contain our most basic instincts, because otherwise society would run in chaos. And when you have a friend, one would think that you wouldn't, if the bag of money belonged to your friend, would you return it? And you'd probably say yes. If the bag of money belonged to your mother, would you return it? If it belonged to your neighbor, well, maybe. Do I like that neighbor or not? If it belonged to a guy up the street, well, I know that guy up the street.
The further
or not.
away it gets from your circle, the
from
easier
the
it is.
proximity. Right, so
when it gets to Bank of America or Wells Fargo, you're much
you're
less
like,
likely
keeping
to
it.
say yes.
it's like
Okay, I
somebody
get
else's
it.
money.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't. So
got
why
plenty
should
of
I
money.
die for somebody else's money? You know, why am I? But look at the system we've created with laws and rules, and it starts if you go in the Bible, the original Testament. So there are these guidelines of how you should live your life, like don't covet thy neighbor's wife, or don't mix milk and meat because you'll get sick, or whatever, right? But we started with kind of a basic set of rules, but even then, there was a recognition that if you don't put guidelines around human beings, then all bets are off.
They're going to run amok.
They're going to run amok.
Yep.
Right? And that's what troubles me about the world. And maybe if we thought of everyone as your friend, then when the bag of money fell off the truck, you'd think, well, those guys in that truck are my friends. And boy, they're going to get in a lot of trouble when they get to the bank and they're short a bag of money. Hey, I'm going to tell them there's a bag of money missing. Maybe if we had friendship and the sense of connection that goes with it and the sense of respect that goes with it, maybe that's the solution. But we've had this discussion of what are we going to do to keep the world from ending? And maybe one of those things is to treat everybody as you'd want to be treated.
The
The golden rule.
Yeah, see?
It all comes down,
Yeah,
right?
see?
Yeah.
And
One rule to rule them all.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
The
why
golden rule
don't
was
we?
much more prominent
But
when I
why-
was younger
again-
than it is now.
Yeah, but why don't we?
Yeah.
Why don't we?
Why do we veer off?
Why does there have to be a rule to do the right thing, the respectful thing? And if you think about it, leave religion out of it, right? Because the devil tempts you and all. Well, that's Catholicism's creation of hell to keep people in the church in line. So, but go before that. Way back when, was there ever a time when a group of people were so affiliated that everyone treated each other well? The joke on Margaret Mead, remember, if you know Margaret Mead, the sociologist who's long since dead, and she wrote about these people in some tribe in Polynesia where everybody got along and there were no fights and there was no disagreement. And she said, see, this is how human beings were supposed to be, and society and culture has screwed with them and has made them how terrible they are, right? And then later on it came out that they were acting.
Yeah.
They were putting one over on her, and they let's tell her that we all love each other, everything's wonderful, nobody ever covets anybody else's wife, let's all. And eventually it came out that they were just putting on a show. It wasn't true. It wasn't real, because these instincts are even more prevalent in these more primitive
Right.
cultures, right? It's You need at least one or two scotches to sit back and think about. Look at how many rules we have. Look at how many guidelines. Look at how many. You got to know rules for this and rules for that, and even for socialization, you got to know rules: when to talk, when not to talk, when to listen.
Yeah.
Right.
I think about that because it seems overwhelming. Like I'm
Right.
just trying to explain to my little one how to get along with her cousins, and then I realized, God, I've been speaking 5 minutes on rules.
Right.
She's 3. It's too much.
Right.
Golden rule: just don't treat anybody. Treat everybody the way you want to be treated. Don't hit your cousin.
Right. And if in fact the salvation of our species lies in our ability to do the right thing, and if in fact we're more likely to do the right thing for people who are closer in our inner circle to who we have affiliations to, then we have to expand that circle. And if those connections shape our brain, then every message we send, every silence we allow, molds who we are and who we become and who our children become. But something has to change. We've had this discussion on almost every show because we're not going to have the brains of dogs. Easier for dogs. It's just a lot easier to be a dog, despite the fact that some aren't treated very well. But it's just a lot easier because the rules of the world
Are much different.
and very very simple. There's not a whole lot of them.
Yeah.
Right? And here we have so many more rules. And I'll leave you with a story of I don't think I've told this story before, but it's a boy with autism that I was working with, very, very bright, but very socially inept. And because of that, he couldn't take anybody's perspective, so he would say things that were off color or off base or that he didn't think were because he didn't realize how they would take it. And he's 16 and he wants to get a job, and he gets a job as a bagger in a supermarket. And he's really happy about this. And as he's bagging, he's, how's your day? And he's got his scripts that he does with everybody. And there's a girl that's working alongside him, also a bagger, his age. And he likes her, right? Saying you have autism, as you know from that TV show, couples get married with autism. Mm-hmm. He liked her. And he told me about her, and he said, I'm going to ask her to go to the prom. Okay, I didn't think anything of it. I didn't say, well, how are you going to ask her? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
He writes her a note. And in this note, he writes what he thinks, as Sheldon would in that TV show, what she might like. So he writes, Dear so-and-so, I really like working with you. You're a very nice person. I'd like to see you naked. Will you go to the prom with me? Now,
Tell
she
me it
gets the
worked.
note, immediately takes it to the store manager. Store manager confronts him. Well, what did I do?
Yeah.
Go home. So now he comes to see me. He's not going to the prom, and he's lost the job. And he looks at me, and I wish I had these things on film, but because this is almost 20 years ago. And Dr. Sam, isn't what I said the highest compliment you could pay a woman, that you want to see her naked? Well, think about it, because there are a lot of women you look at and go, "Oh, I don't want to see her naked."
Yeah.
And then there's others you go, "Oh, I wouldn't mind seeing her naked."
Yeah.
Just not with any ill intent, but just she's pleasing to look at, right?
Yeah, he speaks
Right.
the truth.
He speaks the truth.
Yeah.
And I said, after a pause, I had never thought of that. I said, "Well, yeah, but you have to know when to say that." And this kind of look came over his face, and he said, "Well, Dr. Sam, we've worked so hard on what to say. You never told me that I have to know when to say it."
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's
Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah.
You can't just say it. Now, if he's gone out with this girl on 12 dates and they've smooched a little bit and they're getting a little close, and he says, "Babe, I'd like to see you naked." Then maybe she goes, "Wow, this is great." And of course, the old Ellen DeGeneres, I don't think it was Ellen DeGeneres, I think it was one of the other, Paula Poundstone's joke about if a woman asks a man to take his clothes off, boom, they're off.
They're off.
But if a man asks a woman, he gets smacked, right? Yeah. So I don't know that we're going to save the world today, but we need to do something about physical contact and socialization and teamwork and feeling some sense of obligation to the second grade student sitting next to you and to the person riding on the bus with you and to the people in your neighborhood. And all of us have a hard time. We have a hard time doing that.
Yeah.
It's just not who we are.
Even harder now with technology, correct?
Yeah, even harder with technology.
Yeah,
Because
because
it's-
we've moved into our house.
Technology has
Yeah.
made it convenient,
Right.
but it's still something we're going to have to work
Because you
through.
can still talk to people, but you don't pick up a phone and actually hear their voice.
That's right. Texting
And
is,
our behavior has possibly become worse because
Yeah.
online
Because of
it's
that.
easy to be.
you can
Oh,
get away with
yeah,
all kinds of
yeah.
stuff. I mean, texting
and
lets
there's
you
a
get away with
inaccurate
all.
feeling of actually feeling connected when it's really maybe some shallow level of connection where
Right.
you're just sending a message.
And maybe as time goes on, AI will help us, and we'll have our little AI social bot, and everything we think, it'll say, no, you can't think that. And everything we're about to type in our phone, it'll override and say, no, you're not going to send that. And we'll have a social conscience in a bot.
We need to create a Emily Post bot that teaches you behavior.
Well, yeah, but again, it's my friend in the supermarket. There's a right time and not a right time, and no matter how many social behaviors you learn, still timing is a big issue.
So in the timing.
We have
it's being able to read that cue, I think.
right. Well,
Yeah.
that's right. And some people
Which
are
is the
cueless.
other part of it.
Not clueless, but cueless.
Yeah.
They don't have a cue. And
Yeah.
They don't have a clue, and they don't have a cue. But hey, it was nice having a guest today.
Kevin,
Hey.
thank you for
Kevin,
being here.
Absolutely.
Kevin,
Yeah. Appreciate
and you can find Kevin around, and he's developing a line of clothing a few lines of clothing, and building a few buildings.
You got
and-
some social media that you want to promote here? Instagram or
Sure.
Where do we reach you?
We reach me at OncaOfficial, ONCAofficial.com. Also at offthegridsurplus.com and camp8848.com and blackyak.us.
Yeah,
Wow.
these are
So-
companies that he's
They look to work
developing.
with.
So slide into his DMs and
Yeah.
get social.
And
Get
be
social.
nice.
And
That's
get
right.
social. Well, thank you guys.
Thanks again, Kevin, James, and Sam. As always, this is Dave Evanoff. Thanks for being with us, Brainers, on episode 4, Your Brain on Connection. We'll see you next time.
Just because we said it doesn't mean it's true. You're on your own.